Does the wood your guitar is made of really matter? Does mahogany sound different than rosewood? And what does any of this have to do with wine? We'll answer these questions and more today on Acoustic Addicts.
This is Carl. He's an awesome guitar player. He's got a recording studio. This is Richard. He's an expert on high-end acoustic guitars. He's got a guitar shop.
So one day Carl's in the store, he's playing some guitars.
And Richard's teaching me the differences in the wood and using words like bloom.
And he and I get into a discussion about tonewoods and body shapes and the style of music that they lend themselves to.
And all of a sudden we had
this epiphany.
I produce video, and you...
And I've been doing this for 39 years, and I'd really love to share this knowledge with everyone.
Richard plays a little guitar, but I've put in a lot of hours.
Carl's a great player, and he knows an awful lot about audio.
And then I thought, what if we could show the difference?
Let's show people what great sound looks like.
A little writing, a little planning, a little recording, some video cameras. A couple weeks later, and we've got a show. So this is my Taylor, my Koa K20.
Yeah, that interesting guitar, built back in 1993. The thing with Koa is the big draw to Koa has always been aesthetics. I mean, you kind of are drawn to Koa because of its visual beauty, but it also has a neat tonal characteristic to it that more and more people are starting to find appealing. So I think when we do this comparison, this is going to be kind of nice because, that whole wine thing, we'll get into that.
Right. Well, let's just listen to a little bit of this, and then we'll talk about wine.
Sure.
So it has a bright sound, but it's also very balanced.
Yeah, I think Koa, when I think about Koa, I think about a certain delicateness that it has, and we'll compare that to Rosewood, which tends to be more bold. Koa tends to be a bit more delicate, but it still has plenty of warmth, still has plenty of character.
So what wine is Koa?
For me, it would be a Pinot Noir.
Okay.
Yeah, so, if we stick in the red family, thinking of Cabernet as this big, bold wine, that would definitely be Rosewood. Merlot would be your Mahogany, still bold, but not quite as in your face. And then you get to Pinot Noir, which is more delicate.
Now, talking about the sound of this, one reason I like it is because it records really, really well.
Sure.
When we're recording, you don't hear any coloration, like there's no overtones jumping out at you and coloring the sound.
I think that's a good way to put it. It does not do a lot in terms of creating all of those overtones that when you're recording can get in the way. I mean, that's the reality of it.
So here's the front of the guitar, very beautiful. The back. What can we say about a little bit more about the wood? And is this an endangered species? Because you look at wood like this and you say, oh, it's from Hawaii. And I'm thinking, am I going to get arrested for having a guitar?
Well, you won't get arrested. But the one thing you would have a very difficult time is finding Koa of that quality. It grows only on the Big Island, above 5,000 feet. And it's very difficult at this point in time to get this grade of Koa. And there's an interesting story in how it's harvested. Many of the trees are laying down up above 5,000 feet, and these families wait until they have a kid going to college, and then they send out the word, hey, guess what? There's an old Koa tree. And then all these people come down upon it, and they bid them up. I mean, some of them go for as much, literally, $250,000 for a Koa tree.
Wow.
$250,000, and it's unknown until you cut it open what the quality is going to be. It's either going to be ukulele quality or it's going to be this. So
Taylor pays that money for a tree before they even know if it's going to work.
You got it. And this is an interesting part about how these guitars are made. They call it cracking it open. So the moment is boom, you crack it open, you either go wow or, oh, geez, that was a lot of money to spend. And so, yeah, this is the kind of nice thing about Koa. It's aesthetically pleasing and difficult to find.
And balanced when it comes to recording.
Tone-wise, a very balanced tone, yes.
All right, so what are we looking at now?
We're looking at a Taylor 714 CE. It's a beautiful instrument. The 7 series from Taylor is climbing up the ladder because, with Taylor, it starts at a 100 series and goes up to a 900 series. Then there's some above that, but this is up the line. This is rosewood back and sides with an Engelmann spruce top. And Engelmann, the reason you use Engelmann is it has a responsiveness and a presence to it that belies its age. I mean, people go to Engelmann because they want a guitar to come out sounding like it's already matured. And you'll hear it when you play this guitar.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
yeah.
nice. And
Yeah, it works for me because I'm a Rosewood guy, so I've always liked Rosewood. I think it's got this big warmth to it, and it's very embracing.
yeah, it does. More low end
More low end, positively.
and still very balanced.
Still very balanced, and the Engelmann gives it that presence that you may not necessarily get out of Sitka spruce, or you may not get out of Adirondack right off the get-go. Adirondack and Sitka will grow to that, but Engelmann has this presence sort of built right into it.
And when you say presence, do you mean loudness?
Well, part loudness, part attack. Engelmann, it attacks. You play it, it's there. The interesting thing about the 714 CE is the body size is a bit smaller. Rosewood can have this big, robust sound, so sometimes by going a little bit smaller, you get a little bit more control.
So the Rosewood has more bottom end to it. You can hear that it has more low end. What kind of wine would Rosewood be?
I am going with Rosewood being your Cabernet.
This is a big in your face.
This is big and bold, and I'm here. So when you drink it, it's big and it's bold. Yeah. We are looking at a Santa Cruz Roy Southerner. And I think the first thing that happens when you look at this guitar, you get kind of a vintage feel out of it. It's got this throwback.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does.
You can see the edging.
Just the binding, the shape of the body. It's all about kind of vintage look. It's mahogany back and sides with a Sitka spruce top. Yeah, really nicely done. And so I'll jump ahead of the game here and tell you this is Merlot.
Yeah, so what characteristics does Merlot have?
Well, Merlot is still in that same family of red wines, but it is a little bit less bold than a Cabernet. So you're still going to have bottom end, which is great and what you're looking for, but maybe a bit more controlled. Yeah,
Okay.
let's listen to it.
What I can say about this guitar is I feel the vibration.
Right.
I don't know what that means, but it's singing in my hands.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, Carl, and I'll tell you why. Richard Hoover, who builds Santa Cruz guitars, actually learned to build guitars by taking the first guitar he ever got was a 1968 like Harmony or something. He took it home and he tore it apart. He was fascinated with guitar building. So he asked his mom to get all of the information on guitar building that he could. But in 68, there just wasn't a lot of information. The information that was available was about violins. There was tremendous amount of information about building violins. He used that art of violin building in his guitars. So he really tries to get the entire instrument involved, and that's what you're hearing. or feeling.
So are all mahoganies created equal?
No, they're not. And so let's talk about Richard Hoover's mahogany. The woods that Richard Hoover uses are reclaimed. And that means some of these woods are very, very old, 250, 300-year-old reclaimed woods. He actually pays 5 times what you would pay for standard, call it new growth mahogany. Santa Cruz only makes 750 guitars a year. And just to give you a perspective on that, some of the major domestic manufacturers are making 750 guitars a day. So limited production, attention to detail, highly selected tone woods, and sort of a devotion to a craftsmanship that turns out being that guitar.
All right, so the first question for the McPherson is, why did the sound hole move?
Well, that's a question that comes up a lot. People say, why'd you migrate the sound hole? And it has to do with what's called tension. A lot of people call these guitars flat top guitars, when in reality, they're not flat. They actually have a radius to them. And that radius plays a key role in getting tone and presence out of your guitar. Much like in a piano, it's called a crown. And without that crown, without that tension, the wood just isn't going to sing the way that it sings.
I see.
So what Matt McPherson decided was, if you migrated the sound hole, you could make your X brace. You got it.
And so the brace...
The X brace would run the length of the guitar. So imagine now in the center, you have that force pushing at the center of the wood. Well, that's going to evenly disperse that tension.
When I think of sound waves traveling through the wood and then it gets to the sound hole in a typical guitar, it sort of stops. But you have this sort of continuity here that you don't have in a typical guitar.
And that's the engineering marvel in these guitars.
So also you notice that it has a...
Cantilevered.
Yeah.
Yeah, cantilevered neck. Again, laws of physics. If you dampen the top of the wood, something's going to happen. So why have the fingerboard dampening? Get it above it, no damping effect.
Got it. And let's play a chord here. That just goes on and on.
There's some sustain going on there.
Yeah. So why that sustain comes from that crown, that bridge?
It comes from the crown. It comes from the bridge. It comes from the bracing patterns. It comes from all of the things that Matt McPherson has worked on to develop a guitar that is unique.
And now what's this made of?
That is beeswing mahogany with an Adirondack spruce top. Now, Adirondack spruce is considered the holy grail of spruce. So let's talk about this amazing sustain. One of the things that McPherson uses and employs in the building of their guitars is a bracing system that is unlike any other. Most companies, one of the X braces will be contiguous and the others will block into it, pass over to the other side. McPherson doesn't do that. They do overpasses and underpasses. That's part of the sustain technology. The other thing is there's a composite in the neck of this guitar that keeps it very, very stiff. That also translates into sustain.
So the craftsmanship is as important as the wood in these.
Yeah, Carl, what we're going to explore here, and I love this, is we're exploring science and art.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really fascinating stuff.
All right, so what we're looking at here, Richard, is a sort of a matrix in Adobe Audition CS 5.5. I've got all the K20 clips right here on the first track, all the Taylor 714 CE clips here on the second track, the Roy Southerner on the third, and the McPherson 4.5 on the fourth. We've got the soft E, the medium E chord, and the loud E chord, the octaves, picking, and strumming. You can download all of these in full fidelity on the website, but what I want to do is just start with looking at the spectrum analysis of just the K20, and I think the soft strum is a good place to start because the soft strum, it's not forced. So take a look at that. What do you think of that, Richard?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it looks like from here, what I'm seeing is a good amount of bottom end on the initial attack and quite a bit of decay, actually. So it's got good sustain.
Right. So let's just play it, and then I'll describe what you're looking at here. So this is just another way of looking at the wave. And if you take a look, this is the typical amplitude wave that you normally see in any kind of digital audio setup. And instead of looking at the amplitude, what I want to do is I want to look at the frequency spectrum analysis. The intensity of the color is the amount of volume in that frequency range. The frequency ranges go from very low frequencies, and I'm zooming in here down to the very bottom, 200 hertz and up, all the way up to 20K at the very top.
And Carl, if I can ask you, that sort of that kind of railroad track that's going on, what does that indicate?
Are you talking about this right there?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so those are pulses, which happen because of frequencies, how they interact with each other. They you ever tune a guitar and you have the E strings at the top two E string, the E string and the B string on the 5th fret, and as you tune them up, you hear that wah 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 wah.
Exactly.
As it gets closer, that modulation slows down. Well, that's what you're seeing there. You're seeing like a little dissonance between some frequencies, and there's a little pattern going on.
Could we say that could be defined as the bloom or the character, or is that taking it too far?
Yeah, that's more like the character. I'll zoom in and you can see kind of what I'm talking about. There's a rich layering of harmonics here that come in groups as you move up and down the spectrum, and this is really where it starts the final strum. These are the strings, ba 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 ba, right?
Yeah.
You can see this, the low E string all the way to the top E string. So that's the final chord right there. And let me just zoom out again so you can see.
Interesting how on the decay it sort of, I'm sure it's not really happening, but it feels like it swells a little bit. Is that something that we can see?
Yeah, and that's your bloom, right?
Right, yeah.
That's what's going on. The frequencies sort of, the sound sort of amplifies itself in certain aspects at certain times.
And so if we stick with that wine analogy, that's what makes the wine memorable.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
like, oh
yeah.
that's so the guitar's doing the same thing.
All right, so there you go. Let's jump down to the 714 CE. Yeah, now you can definitely hear more bottom, and I'm going to scroll way down to sub 100 here. Let me look at that. Look at that big bulge right there. And that's even below. You've got down here in 50 hertz, 40 hertz. You've got a lot going on down there. And you can see that, right?
Yeah.
Like right in that range right there. Below, that's 40 hertz and below.
That's the warmth.
That's
the warmth of Rosewood.
That's the bottom end, yeah. All the guitars have a lot of lower mid-range. That's really the dominant frequency range of acoustic guitars. Let's listen one more time. Yep, very nice. All right, now let's go down to the Roy Southerner.
And this is Mahogany. Wow.
Very belly, lots and lots and lots of harmonics. Look at how dense those harmonics are right there. Just
That is, yeah.
lots and lots of things going on there, and even way up in the 20K range, still lots and lots of like bells.
Yeah. Or sometimes the term I would use is jump. The guitar has some jump to it.
Yeah, that's a good term. But look at all that.
Yeah,
Just layers of harmonics.
and look at the bottom end is saturated.
Yeah, the bottom end, and especially the lower mid, like even from 700 hertz here to 200 hertz, and all the way down to 100 hertz. But not as much bottom end
No.
as the Rosewood. Let's listen to the Rosewood again. Yeah, that's just bassier. So now let's move on to the McPherson, and you can see the sustain already. Look at that. It goes all the way out.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's just insane. Now, the thing I'd say about the McPherson is it's got more mid-range, I think, overall than any of the other guitars. It's a more balanced mid-range. It goes, all the way up into, I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, you've got orange all the way up into 3 and 4K.
Yeah.
And
but look at the sustain of the low end.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's something else.
And there's that bloom. You can hear that bloom.
Yeah.
A second in, then it starts to swell.
Right there.
Yeah.
Right there. You can really see the bloom in the overall amplitude. Let's look at that. And let me boost it up a little so you can see. Right in there.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? It gets that. Can we look at that amplitude on a couple of the other guitars?
Yeah, sure. Here's the Koa.
Pretty steady decay.
Yeah, that's a fairly steady decay.
Yeah. And the Rosewood?
Let's look at the Rosewood.
Yeah, a little wavier.
It's got a little bloom.
Yep.
A little more bloom to it. Here's the Roy Southerner.
And it's kind of interesting. Remember, I used that term jump. Look at the amplitude. It does jump.
Right there.
Yep.
Yeah. It's interesting. Well, there you go. Now, what I've done here for one last test is I've got all 4 of the soft E's together. And we'll hear them side by side, one after another, and then we'll see the spectrum analysis. Okay, now. Well, we hope you enjoyed the pilot episode of Acoustic Addicts. I know I'm an addict. I know you are too.
I love this stuff.
Yeah. So if you have a guitar or know of a guitar that you want us to feature on this show, tweet us, email us. You can go to our website, acousticaddicts.com. You can tweet me at Carl Franklin.
Me at Caruso Richard.
Now, if you excuse us, we have to go feed our addiction.
Let's eat.